So this is, it's May 16th, 2024 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee is coming to order. It's now 1 o'clock. Run through the roll call. Mr. Holland, I'm here. Mr. Colhays.
Here.
Mr. Olds.
Here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yep. Holland is here. Ms. Zalatel. Mine, I don't think, we'll let you know if she shows up. We do have a quorum of at least 3 members. Aaron, can you help us with the public involvement announcement, please?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public. The public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meetings. Each meeting business items are first presented by staff or consultants. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. Couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
All right. Do we have approval of the agenda? A motion to approve. Mr. Coleman is seconded by Dr. Boland. And we have a change.
Yes, I did. I received a request from DOT to add an item onto the agenda to give a STIP amendment update. This would fall under project. Okay, it looks like it's muted. Can you guys hear us online?
We can.
Yeah, I heard a response. Yeah. Okay, good now. Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, we have, of course, the minutes from the April 18th, 2024 meeting for approval. I will hear a motion. By Mr. Colhays, seconded by Dr. Boland. For the record, Ms. Zalatel is joining us at 1:03. Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the April 18th, 2024 meeting minutes are approved. Have our first action item is action item 5A, which is the 2023 to 26 TIP narrative update. We have a presentation.
Yeah, I'll be giving a quick overview of this item for you all. So before you is an update to the TIP narrative, the 23 through 26 TIP narrative. This is in response to a couple of corrective action that we received as part of our certification review. Corrective action number 1, which talks about the TIP must include description of the effective projects towards achieving federal performance measures. So the updated narrative includes the following. The performance measures as adopted in the 2050 MTP, which is table 2.1. Section 2.6.1, a description of the TIP criteria categories and what performance measures are associated with those category criteria. And then table 2.2 that lists all of the projects in the 23 through 26 TIP and which performance measure and target they help to achieve. Additionally, there was another section added after discussion with FHWA after the TAC meeting about fiscal constraint that we added. It's section 2.7.5. Talks about fiscal constraint, that it's a requirement of the TIP. To demonstrate fiscal constraint, the TIP tables 1 through 10 show all the anticipated revenue and project costs, and talks about that the majority of the funding is federal, with state and local paying the match using non-federal. There are a couple of non-federally funded projects from partner agencies or state of Alaska in TIP 10. Additionally, there are 2 build grants shown in the TIP. One is for the cold storage cargo facility at the Anchorage Ted Stevens International Airport. And then there's one anticipated build grant for bus stop and facilities shown in table 9. One thing to be aware of, if the anticipated build grant for the bus stops and facilities is not awarded, funding will have to be sought from another source. And then also indicating that at this time, there's enough anticipated revenue to cover the project costs for projects on the TIP. So these are amendments or edits before you today for the TIP narrative. Thank you.
Aaron, pardon me, the action requested is for the policy committee to approve the updated 23 to 26 tip narrative. Are there any questions from the committee? Hearing none, do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
To approve by Ms. Zalatown. Seconded by Ms. Pauls. Thank you. Are there any objections to approving the motion?
I actually do have a question. So under 2.6 on page 7, the 2 A's and 2A1, 2A2, 2A3, 2A5. So those are, I guess, performance. But those are things that are not on target. So I guess maybe walk us through why having the number of fatalities, the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. What does that mean going forward?
So as a reminder, we adopt the targets that the state sets for a lot of these performance measures at this time because we didn't have, or at the time because we didn't have our safety plan in place, and we're now have it in place. So there'll be discussion on whether we as AMATS want to adopt our own targets. As of the last overview for the fatalities, or when we looked at this, they were not on target for these different performance measures. There's no penalty for AMATS if they're not on target or not, but there is penalty for the state, which they have to use some of their HSIP funding to help address these targets. And that's part of the discussion that's ongoing with the safety targets as they're being set for this year right now, which should be coming before you hopefully in the next month or so. And we'll bring that forward and have a discussion then about safety targets and where we're at and what's being done to help address them.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions or comments? No? I think I already went to public and I heard none. What is the will of the committee on it?
You already have a motion.
I do, okay.
And a second.
Did I have a second? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none. Action item 5B is the AMATS public participation plan update. We have a presentation on that.
Yes, I will give a quick update on this one. So this is another item that's being addressed or helping to address one of our corrective actions from the TMA certification, corrective action number 2, where it said the PPP must include information about the disposition of public comments. That's the comments and response summaries that we use for our documents, and how and where the public can gain access to the disposition of public comments as part of the final MTP and TIP documents. So the MTP and TIP documents already contain this information, that there's a link to the website and where those are located at. The PPP is being updated with the following 2 items to add under the MTP section where these public comments are located, the responses are located, and then same with the TIP section itself. So it's just making our documents all aligned in one cohesive fashion. This is a minor update to the PPP. Just as a heads up, a more extensive update to the PPP will be coming before you, hopefully within the next couple months, but we'll see. We were waiting for Christine Schutte to come back. And now that she is back, she will be working on bringing that along with our Title VI plan update for the committees and for the public to review. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
By
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Zalatel. Do I hear any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. On to action item 5C, which is the 2024-001 CAC, which is Citizens Advisory Community Advisory Committee. Thank you. Resolution on people moving bus route R. Is there a presentation?
That'll be me. I actually want to say that we are ahead of the curve in a lot of places because people still refer to it as Citizens Advisory Committee. So, we have a win over other MPOs throughout the country. So it's a small little victory. Okay, before you is CAC Resolution 2024-001. The CAC met on February 27th in a special meeting to discuss People Mover Route R. The reason this has taken a little while to get to you all is it came before everybody before and said, wait, we need to hear from People Mover before anything can move forward on this, and People Mover was unavailable at those meetings. So Public Transportation Department is here, a representative from them to help speak on this item if you have any questions. So what this resolution is asking is to find funding to implement Route R in the 2020 Transit on the Move plan. Can you pull up the Transit on the Move? Yeah, that link there, and then find Route R so everybody can see, please. So this is out in Eagle River. We'll try and find it for you all here. Go ahead and do a Control F. Do Route R. Searching until you find it. Yep. So, oh, no, scroll down. Keep going. There we go. Okay, so you all can see what Route R is. So the request from the Community Advisory Committee is to have this route be placed into service as soon as possible. Consideration should be given to extending the route to include Eagle River High School, the native village of Oklutna, and northern communities in some capacity. Also, the CAC is requesting additional funding for this route to be added beyond the current allocation so as not to impact existing routes. The TAC did meet at their May meeting to discuss this item and asked staff to bring forward some information for the policy committee as part of this, including there was discussion by the Public Transportation Department about the priority of this particular project in the Transit on the Move plan, or this route on the Transit on the Move plan, that there's a cost associated with this, which is actually shown on the memo. So estimated about $5 million in infrastructure improvements would be needed, and then operational improvements on a yearly basis. I believe that is, correct me if I'm wrong, is 3.2 million per year for a 30-minute headway and 1.7 million for a 60-minute headway. And then there's also paratransit that would have to be added at a cost of $350,000. Additionally, the TAC requested bring forward some funding options for the policy committee to consider for this route if there's a desire to request that this be put into service. One funding route is through AMATS congestion mitigation air quality dollars. So as you know, CMAQ dollars can be used to help operational expansion of transit. We can use 3 years worth of funding spread over 5 years of operations. And then afterwards, the Public Transportation Department would have to seek other funding to continue the route. I believe this has been done recently, so it's there is precedent for this. However, the AMATS CMAQ dollars are fully programmed through 2026, so there is no funding to be able to do this. So what would have to happen is both the MTP and the TIP would have to be amended. Projects would have to be removed to free up the CMAQ funding, and then this route would have to be added in. So there's a long, complicated process for that, but it is an option we wanted to provide to you. Assembly general funds is another option. The request could go to the assembly to ask for funding. I'll just leave it at that. Outside grant funding, there is opportunity to provide other grants to help with operational assistance. Or what was discussed as well is there could be an opportunity to put in microtransit, which is a little less cost intensive than a new bus route. And Bart might be able to speak more on the microtransit and what it all means. I'm not as up to speed on it, but it would be contracted out and would not require infrastructure routes of needs of a new route. And then it's unknown at this, or the time of writing this memo, if establishing microtransit in the area would require paratransit service as well. Okay, so I'm sorry that was a lot, but there was a lot of discussion at the TAC on this particular item. So the request is, the Technical Advisory Committee recommended that this resolution be sent back to the CAC so they could recommend how to incorporate this into the MTP and the TIP, recognizing that they're both fiscally constrained. Thank you.
Thanks for repeating that action requested, Aaron. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yes, I
So,
may I ask you first?
please, yeah.
Is the Public Transportation Advisory Board someone we could refer this to take a look at in the context of the strategic plan, the other priorities for two reasons. One, to see if it should require any changes to the current plan for People Mover, or to give us information back about how the request intersects with the current plans. Is that something PTAP could take a look at?
Yeah, they can certainly take a look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions from the committee? And I'll just add a couple. I think I'm probably thinking along the same lines as the Zelatel is, and I'm not sure that if we send it back to the CAC, with all smart people, passionate people, I'm not sure that I think they'll need some assistance in trying to figure that out at the TAC meeting. I heard some, what I thought were pretty creative solutions. I'm not sure if they're creative or not in the transit world, but they sounded creative to me. Yeah, I mean, if we send this back to the CAC, then I guess my expectation would that they would receive some guidance from staff on whether it's sort of looking for non-conventional funding or other things. That's my comment. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none. Are there any comments from the public?
Yeah.
In front of here, please state your name and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kyle Milkey. I'm a Eagle River resident, Eagle River Community Executive Board member, and a president of a large HOA in Eagle River. I self-describe myself as an urbanist. I come here today to thank AMATS and public transit staff for their patience and understanding, as well in the middle of Q1 budget revisions and the passing of the AMATS MPP. They answered many questions and took time out of their busy schedules to respond to the Eagle River community's retrospectively haphazard request for prioritization of our neighborhood route as a resolution regarding the route passed through the AMATS Community Advisory Committee. Community members are very inexperienced in the process and are unaware of the drastic financial invalidity the project and resolution posed to AMATS and public transit budgets. I also want to thank the TAC for the care, attention, and patience they took in considering the route and for the many alternative solutions they came up with around the table that were much more fiscally sound and easier to potentially fund from an alternative source such as the assembly or grant funding. I was especially encouraged by the idea of potentially infrequent, even maybe once a week microtransit service pilot that could act as a shuttle from the areas that are off of the public transit network to the downtown Eagle River Transit Center as a low stakes, low infrastructure way to improve service in the region. And I hope that a project such as this could be thought of for future revisions of the MTP and the public transit on move plans. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Bart Rudolph with the Public Transportation Department. I think where the department has issue with this specific task or this ask is that it's contradictory to what the AMATS Policy Committee has already approved as their priorities for future transit routes. In the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, you have already set the establishment, or you've already established the next 3 routes that we should look at. And then you have an advisory committee to you sending a separate letter to us recommending something different. So we would request that this committee kind of reconcile that with the community advisory committee so that your priorities align, because it is confusing from the department's perspective.
Hey Bart, question for you. If we look at some of these other alternatives that Mr. Milton came up with or spoke to, or Aaron mentioned the micro transit, does that still conflict with the plan that we have in place?
Only if you want to use CMAQ funding.
Okay.
If you have other funding outside of AMATS, it would be fine, but we currently don't have any identified.
And again, so if we decide to turn this back to the community advisory committee, what would your recommendation be on who should work with it to try to find that solution?
We can work with them as like the funding, identifying funding, but my recommendation would be if they find this to be a priority of AMATS, they should identify which transit routes come out of the MTP and come out of the TIP so they can be funded and keep this within AMATS. We certainly get letters from community councils and other organizations requesting routes. And that makes sense. That's fine because they're not contrary to their established plan. So that's, but if the advisory committee wanted to send a separate letter saying fund this route outside of AMATS with these identified funding sources, you know, that would make more sense.
Mr. Stark.
Yeah, James Starzik, DOT Planning. Just as an aside, I think this, similar to some of the conversations we've had about subcommittee resolutions and comments, it kind of speaks to a larger question on what length does the policy committee want to give to the subcommittees in making public statements or representing themselves as a subcommittee of AMATS. So, you know, this is, I think, considering this resolution is part of a broader conversation that I think needs to be had about when is it appropriate for these subcommittees to make comment outside of passing them along to the policy committee to give it the AMATS blessing. My 2 cents.
Are there any other comments? Hearing, seeing none. What's the will of the committee?
Move to refer to the Public Transit Advisory Board for people mover.
Moved and seconded, moved by Ms. Zeldell, seconded by Dr. Boland.
Can I speak to it briefly?
Yes.
Yeah, so the idea of taking it over to PTAP is to do a few things. One, evaluate it in the context of the current strategic plan that People Mover has. Does it mean we should make a change to this request mean we should make a change to the strategic plan? Also explore the microtransit option and what funding might be available for that. Is there an interim solution while we look at the bigger solutions? And really, this advisory board is very familiar with the route setting, kind of the prioritization of the routes as already is adopted by this policy committee. So I think they're almost in a better position to take a request like this, evaluate it within People Movers capacity, various funding sources. The other nice thing is they can think outside of just AMATS or CMAQ funding, look at what might be available, bring that back to us. And then I think we're in a better position to know what the role of AMATS might be. They can also forward it onto the assembly and the municipality, generally to see if they're creating and leveraging, or again, an interim solution.
Further discussion.
So I have a question for Bart. Do we have other microtransit programs currently operating in Anchorage, or would this be kind of like a new pilot, novel thing?
Yeah, we do not right now. We're currently looking at establishing one in South Anchorage. So we could have that discussion as to moving that to Eagle River or doing 2, but we're just now looking at it.
South Anchorage, like Goodwood, or South Anchorage where?
South Anchorage, like south of Diamond, all the way to Pollard's Marsh. It's a big gap in service right now.
Thanks.
And further discussion.
Question or comment for Ms. Zeldell. So I agree with the idea. I think it's a good idea to refer to PTAP. Do we need to add specifics to it, or can you do that, Aaron? Did you capture Member Zeldell's comments about why we would forward what we'd be looking for?
Here's what I got from your comments. Let me know if I got, does change need to be made to the strategic plan that's currently in place? You know, what about microtransit? Have a discussion about that, what the funding is, what it would take to do that. What is the current route prioritization? How does this fit into it? And then the opportunity to think outside of other funding, outside of AMATS as well. And then if need be, can forward it on to the assembly and the municipality for consideration.
Any further discussion? Don't think I'm hearing any. I think that's. So why don't I just go to, if we've been moved and seconded, are there any objections to approving this motion? Hearing none, that motion is approved. The Public Transit Advisory Board is PTA.
Yes.
Schedule. We got action item 5D, which is our last action item. It's the 2024-002 CAC resolution on Minnesota Drive wall. Aaron, will you present?
Yes, I will give a quick overview of this. This one was quite the conundrum of the TAC, so bear with me as I go through this. So the Community Advisory Committee met on March 12th, 2024, in a special meeting to discuss the Minnesota wall, along with the community concerns that have been heard from the Spenard Community Council and the Turnagain Community Council. They came forward with the following recommendation, which you see before you. There are 4 items in here, and I'll read those off, that the CAC is requesting AMATS to call upon DOT to help implement safety plans and goals by setting a timeline for a remedial safety project in 24 that engages the community councils and other stakeholders as requested by the community councils. Address the community council's concern that the median fence wall has made non-motorized crossing less safe. Make effective improvements to both the safety and convenience of non-motorized crossing of Minnesota Drive at Northern Lights and Benson as soon as possible, and ensure stakeholder collaboration for future non-motorized safety projects and anchored by engaging community councils and stakeholders at the early scoping stage and during project design. The Technical Advisory Committee reviewed this, had a pretty robust discussion, and they made the following recommendation: to have the Policy Committee encourage DOT to coordinate with communities in the area, update the TAC and PC as needed, and take a more holistic look at what problems exist in the area and come back with possible solutions. I will mention there is already a project underway that is looking at a possible solution, and that is the Minnesota Drive Pathway Pavement Project that announces funding. DOT has been looking at using that project to help add in the missing crossings on Minnesota and Northern Lights and Benson, which would be part of what is being requested here with this resolution. That's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
So on the missing crossings, were there crosswalks, were there crossings that were removed when this project was put in?
Not that I am aware of. I believe it was just a lighting project that included the wall because of the median and stuff, but no, that the 4th leg that's there was missing and has been for a while.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I guess I have to make that brief comment that I think I stated at the first meeting at AMATS that one of my goals as the regional director was to improve our communication with community, with the city, not just Anchorage, but throughout the region. Should be easier for us in Anchorage because we have 400 people that are that work for the DOT in Central Region that are part of the community. So I certainly would support this coming on to the DOT and us following up on it. We have spoken about it in-house about some options that we can take, some options that we can look at to take to the community councils and and try to address the concerns that they have. I also want to mention that, statistically, 75% ballpark of pedestrian fatalities occur in dark spots, which this remedies. Also at mid-block crossings, which this also remedies. A high percentage of pedestrian fatalities involve alcohol. It's not a perfect fix for sure. We do have a project that's starting to maybe take a look at doing something as a permanent fix, but it's a little ways out because Big Loop is here. I think we just are advertising for a consultant to design that right now. So that permanent solution is probably a few years out. I'll quit there. Are there any comments from the public? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make everyone aware the Assembly has passed its own resolution with regard to this. And so I think it's always interesting to be a policy committee member and also a member of the assembly. So the assembly has taken specific action. I don't know that it necessarily conflicts with this. Just wanted to say that, I think you can have both and you just take all of that advice, and assuming this passes as well, together for kind of a holistic approach to the project.
So I do have a question. So after we passed our assembly resolution unanimously, it was reported about in the media. And in one of the stories, Shannon McCarthy seemed to indicate that the fence wasn't going to go anywhere. And so I guess when you say that you're having internal conversations at DOT for other options, I understand your point about mid-block crossings, but if you look at the Minnesota corridor, very long where pedestrians are essentially accommodating them to cross or supporting to cross. And so it makes sense to me that people would take mid-block crossings because they don't want to walk a quarter of a mile. And so I guess, my questions would be, is it the position of DOT that the fence is not going to go anywhere? And then what other options are you discussing?
Yes, I mean, one of the requirements of the HSFP, which is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, is that all these projects that are selected to be constructed are data-driven. They're set in priority by cost-benefit analysis estimated. The requirement is for, I believe it's 3 years after the installation, that those results need to be monitored. Again, not a perfect solution, but I think it targets some of the biggest causes for the problems that we have there. So we would probably be looking at more of an aesthetic improvement. Again, I will leave that up to the experts. In my mind, it's not a transparent fence. I think there still needs to be a visual barrier so that people don't think that they can cross there. And I don't disagree with you that that's a long way around the wall, but yeah, so not a perfect solution. I think that I covered all your
Options that you're looking at. So is it just going with the material, or are there other pedestrian crossing options?
Well, I think the pedestrian crossing options we will look at through a separate project, because it's not as simple as striking across there. That would be easy, but it's and again, not being intimate with the project, the minimum that we would have to do is add ADA or ADA ramps that would be able to accommodate that crossing, signal work. You got to get into, there's a lot of elements. It's not as easy as painting a crosswalk. I'm sure. Again, I'm not intimate with the project, but I'm sure it's not. So that's going to take the design work that's going to be done. What we need to do is take a look at the cut sheet on that fence and kind of figure out what our options might be to change the material of that fence, or I don't have any options top of mind, but we can work on that based on what's installed. I kind of stuttered through that, but does that help?
I think that helps me understand the DOT's position.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I guess I have a question, Sean. So you mentioned the 3-year monitoring requirement. That's a requirement of the federal funding. And if the project will remove before that, is there a requirement to pay back the funding? What if the decision was made to remove it before 3 years, what are the ramifications?
I think it's probably based on the situation. It certainly, if we see a huge increase in crashes or something like that, then some justification to remove that fence, other than anecdote. I think we can do that and it would still be participating. I'm not sure if we change out the fabric on the fence. My guess is that it won't be participating, but my guess is also that it's probably a relatively small investment, but we do need it. Any further discussion? And I can't remember if I had opened that up to public comment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Mr. Guy, please.
Hi, my name is Kyle Milky again. I just want to express as a member of the public, my shared frustration that it seems like a lot of the assembly members present are biting their tongue about. And I just want to say how frustrating it is as a member of the public, how much the quality of life and the livability of a neighborhood gets so easily dismissed because it's not quantifiable, and how frustrating it is to hear that those are things that aren't cared for and that I really wish that they were. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Yes, there are people online who have comments. So I'll just go in order. Nancy Pease.
Yes, thank you. In listening to this discussion, I've heard that there are internal conversations at DOT, that there are solutions that are a little ways out without knowing what that means, that this project must be monitored for 3 years, so any short-term changes could only be aesthetic, and that pedestrian crossings would have to be a separate project with lots of different elements. What I'm not hearing is the stepping up to the responsibilities of Vision Zero on the municipal side and the safe system approach that DOT has. And both of those are that human health and life are priorities, death and serious injuries are unacceptable, and responsibility is shared between the system designers and the road users. So DOT is here to coordinate municipal and state priorities. And we're certainly hearing that this is a priority. So what the community has asked for and what the community advisory committee has asked for is a timeline for meeting or action. And so can we come away from this meeting with a timeline and also a commitment to compile this internal discussion and engage with the community councils? That's what's behind the resolution. Those two things. Let's have a timeline, and let's have some distillation of all of these discussions that are going on. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm prepared to set a timeline at this meeting, but certainly a commitment to continue the conversation with community councils and these. Another comment?
Yes, our next one is Jason Norris.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak to number 3 that's being shown here under the now therefore be it resolved. In doing that, I'd just like to point back to section 2C of the AMATS complete street policy. We continue to find that a lot of times when complete streets are taken into account, it's more of a check the box than actually making people safe and making them feel like they're a desired user on our streets. And so I would just encourage that as we move forward, whether it be short term or long term, just remember that non-motorized people need to feel safe, and these facilities need to be desirable to use for them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris.
Then Kathy Gleason.
Yes, Chair and committee, thank you so much for allowing me to speak to this. As you were told, Turnagain Community Council last year in December passed a resolution, very similar to the Spenard Community Council resolution in November with regard to the unexpected and completely uncoordinated with councils of adjacent and in that road in their boundaries with regard to this fencing barrier between Northern Lights and Benson on Minnesota Drive. It took us all by surprise, and there was no shortage of negative reaction to it. And it's unfortunate that DOT went ahead and put that up as just an afterthought when they installed much needed lighting in that area. There's no easy answers, but I haven't heard anybody say one good thing about that fencing. Aesthetics, yes. Opaqueness, yes. There is zero visibility now on either side of that fencing that allows non-motorized pedestrians to see what's going on and drivers to see what's going on, especially those making the 2 left-hand turns northbound from Minnesota to West Northern Lights. You cannot see a thing. And unfortunately, it's not really serving the purpose. Yes, it's anecdotal. And we need to do more to see if we can't put some cams up there so that DOT and the powers that be and the decision makers don't have to take our word for it, even though I've heard several things and I've witnessed it myself, that pedestrians are still walking along that fence. So you've got vehicles, a pedestrian, a Jersey barrier, and an opaque fence until they get to the end of that on the north end, and then they go ahead and cross on the south end of that intersection at Minnesota and Northern Lights anyway. But nobody can see beyond that fence until you're right there. I've seen it happen personally. So it's not resolving any kind of pedestrian safety issue at all. So I would hope that there is a way to expedite, not a 3 or 4 year wait and analysis to see what we can do about that fencing. I hate chain link fences, but I think it would be 1,000% improvement as opposed to this opaque cheese grater looking fencing that was installed. So I would really appreciate on behalf of Turnagain Community Council for some dialogue. I appreciate Nancy Pease's. We would like to hear a time frame. We don't want put off, and we'd like to start the discussion about how we can move forward to improve this current situation along Minnesota. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Lisa? Anybody else?
There's anything else online?
Anyone else online? Give the room one more shot. So anybody, any more discussion from the committee? Sure, okay.
Well, I have the opportunity, I might as well take it. Does DOT agree with the assertion in the CAC resolution that the Menard Community Council was not consulted regarding the design or installation of the wall?
I can't speak to that. It was before my time at DOT. Is
there anybody else in the room that could speak to it?
No. Luke, do you have any idea? Present to the community council?
Luke Holland, DOT. I can't speak whether we did or didn't meet with the community councils. I would say that everything that I've heard about the involvement, public involvement in advance of the construction of this, we could have done a better job. And so I don't have a firm answer for you, but I know moving forward, we'll be taking a much more in-depth approach to public outreach on the HSIP program, including a working session with both TAC and policy here next Monday, if I remember right.
Okay, Paul. Yeah, I appreciate that we're going to be having a work session coming up. I also appreciate that we added more project language, project description language for the HSIP projects or HSIP projects. I guess, you know, it makes me a little nervous when I spoke to this, I think at the transportation committee, that there's another program to pedestrian barrier wall in the list of projects upcoming, and I think it's on one of our downtown streets. So I guess I've heard you say, Mr. Holland, a couple times that we need to have solutions that are data driven. Is this going to be sort of like a preferred design going forward at DOTs to where we would want to be installing more of these pedestrian barrier walls because we feel like they're data driven?
Solution in general was data driven. I don't know that anybody anticipated the controversy that the wall created. There's certainly going to be forcing the communities, and I'm not a traffic designer, so I don't know what the solution is for a lot of those things. But that's not much of the answer. But I'm non-committal on that, I guess. But certainly we know that we need to get more public input on those type of projects. Typically, HSIP projects are smaller projects that are, in this case, this is the case here too, the add-ons to other projects. So they don't necessarily maybe get the attention in our public participation effort, but certainly this is lesson learned, and we're always trying to improve, and we're moving in that direction.
I can just follow one more question. So in terms of being data driven, does DOT have policymakers you have data that you can provide to policymakers that shows trade-offs, sort of, if a pedestrian barrier wall becomes a preferred intervention, what are the trade-offs between pedestrian safety and sort of, I guess, quality of life, as Mr. Wilkie mentioned, when it comes to potentially making it more difficult for non-motorized users to use convenient routes. Is this something that's involved in other states, or what type of data are we gleaning from to justify this as an intervention?
We can certainly, I think Monday is probably a good opportunity. Fortunately, I'm not be able to make it, but I think it's a good opportunity for everybody to learn more about that highway safety improvement program, how those projects are scored. And, I think if there's criteria that needs to be added to that list, then that's probably the place for that suggestion and that conversation. Purpose what you asked me or not. So.
Yeah, I'm curious what's the after action on an intervention like this? How do we measure the efficacy of it moving forward, other than just possibly the absence of vehicle collisions with pedestrians or non-motorized users? Like, do we get data that says like how many pedestrians are crossing there, right? Because if we put in an intervention and we no longer have collision data for there, but we find collision data quarter mile up the street or a different direction, I guess I'm not really familiar with the metrics. And so maybe that is something that could be discussed on Monday as well. I can't make that meeting, but I will listen to the recording because I don't have a good sense of exactly, right? Especially when we're talking about non-motorized data, how we're collecting it, particularly around use. So I do appreciate increased lighting. We've found good success so far with that along Tudor Road. But I think the big difference between that project and this one is those two community councils were well informed all throughout that project. And I do know that there was a personnel change in DOT at that time too. We had a retirement of a longtime director who was very good at coming to community council and really talking through all of the options from what we could do, in the immediate term, the midterm, and then like the real great solution we would love is this, but it costs a ton of money and it would take a full redesign or something like that. And I think that really helps the community understand this solution is all right. Maybe we're going toward another solution. We would really love this other thing, but one, it would be really costly. It's going to take a decade and it would be really disruptive to our lives while it happened. So I think if anyone can go back and kind of look at how that used to be, I think that would be really helpful moving forward with these types of projects, because there is a lot of tension around them because they're coming as a result of an unsafe thing, right? And that lack of safety already puts people on edge. What we don't want is for the solution to put people on edge. Thanks.
I appreciate that. It's again, having worked on a lot of those projects in construction, they're rarely popular because in this case, we're cutting off shortcuts for pedestrians. It's usually cutting off shortcuts for motorists, and they're popular to take those shortcuts. So, and yeah, I appreciate that. It's a good comment too. And I think where you were going with where we collect our data is that are we looking myopically at just this area, or are we pushing the problem further up Minnesota or something like that? Good point, good question. And then I think frankly, I guess in 3 years with pedestrian accidents and fatalities, thankfully our numbers are very low annually. I mean, they're higher than our goal, but they're very low. So even reducing that by one could show a very big percentage decrease, but it's still going to be within a standard deviation. So yeah, we work with the data that we have, I guess. Is where I'm going. Anyway, any more discussion? Have we moved and seconded this motion yet? Okay, do I have a movement on the motion?
Move to approve. Is that the resolution?
I can repeat the action.
Okay, sorry.
It's the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee recommends that the policy committee encourage DOT to coordinate with communities in the area, update the TAC or the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee and the Policy Committee as needed, and take a more holistic look at what problems exist in the area and come back with possible solutions.
Move to do that.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none. We approve that motion. Is that the last action item, Aaron?
Yes, it is.
Why don't we move on to agenda item 6A, which is the protected bike lane pilot project.
Yes. Great. We have some people here who will be giving a wonderful presentation, so please direct your attention to the screen. And if you all could introduce yourself for the record, please.
We got a big team, which is maybe a good thing.
I'll kick us off. I'm Brad Corey, municipal traffic engineer, and with me I have Zach Hartman, our Vision Zero coordinator, Anna Bozen, Central Region traffic and safety engineer, and Colin Singleton, CRW project manager for the Anchorage Protected Bike Lane pilot project. And so we're here to give you an update on where this exciting project is at, and also be able to answer any questions that you might have. So if you could jump to the next slide. First, we'll start off with what is a protected bike lane? The way that we're referring to it, there are some different definitions that are used out there, but the one we're using is a protected bike lane on a designated, protected bike lane is a designated on-street bikeway separated from traffic by a vertical component, such as a barrier, curb, or flex post. So there's a few pieces there. Let's go to the next slide and talk about a pilot, which is what this one is. And so a pilot study allows testing of new types of bikeways without the cost, time, or impact of a full road project. And it could be not just a bike lane, but it could be other things. So looking for ways to test some new configuration without having a full project. And this one is going to have a study that documents the process and gathers data and community input to inform future decisions, particularly because this one is funded as a research project with federal funding. And so it has a very robust analysis piece to it. Go to the next slide. Okay, and I'm going to hand it off to Anna and show our teamwork as we talk about our team.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Yeah, Anna Boson, Central Region Traffic Safety Engineer. Prior to my taking this position about 2 months ago, I was the research program manager for the state of Alaska. And like Brad mentioned, this project was funded through the research program, courtesy of the bipartisan infrastructure law that allowed for some additional flexibility with those funding, that funding program. And so this is federally funded through FHWA. And it is informing our complete streets policy development. It is helping us as a coordination effort with our local partner, the city of Anchorage, to explore cost-effective solutions that don't require construction. So these are funds that we cannot do earthwork in. So we are looking at low-cost solutions that are temporary in nature, but help us work with our partners to answer some questions that are coming up from the community. And so this was really a community-led effort. And our team worked closely with Assemblymember Boland, as well as Brad Coy in the Municipal Traffic Office. And our team is made up of CRW engineering, as well as Huddle, which is the Public Involvement Office, and then Kittleson and Associates is a national technical leader in transportation. We also partnered with Bike Anchorage to look at the scope and the content of this project, and they have been working closely with us throughout the project development in the multiple phases that it's involved. So the next picture shows the ribbon cutting of last year's phase 1, which was on Pine and McCary. And I just want to highlight how this kind of project through a low cost, quick build was an opportunity to really engage the public physically at the project site. Here you can see Mayor Dave Bronson, Assemblymember Boland, Brad Coy from the municipal office, as well as numerous legislators and community members in the background. It was only up for a month, but it allowed us as a team to kind of explore the different topics that come with learning new technology and working with new devices. So I'll, I think, pass it off to Zach to actually talk about the findings, I believe, in phase 1, as well as what we anticipate for phase 2.
Yeah, so on the next slide, you can see some of the timelines we're working with across phase 1 and phase 2. Anna mentioned data. One data point I've been sharing as wide as I can. The speeds we noticed on phase 1, extreme speeders going 20+ miles per hour over the limit on Pine Street went from 1 out of every 60 drivers in the before condition. And during the installation, that went down from 1 out of every 60 to 1 out of every 6,000. So pretty compelling data point. We're collecting vehicle volumes, pedestrian volumes, bicyclist volumes. We're also collecting sound data this summer as well, so we can see how that changes in downtown. But these timelines kind of lay out the public involvement effort we've been carrying through this process. So for phase 2, we've been at multiple community councils, downtown twice, South Edition as well, resolutions of support from both of those community councils. AMATS committees have heard from us a couple times. Maybe you're sick of us at this point. And yeah, we're looking towards installation as early as next week. Next slide, please. So the route that we're installing, for those that are unfamiliar, is primarily along 6th Avenue and A Street. So on this graphic here on screen, you can see that proposed route in the dashed green line. So kind of one of the core points behind why we chose this as the route is that this route connects the Chester Creek Trail to the Coastal Trail through downtown. Sure, you can ride around downtown along those two trail systems, but this brings folks on bikes into the heart of Anchorage's downtown. This kind of red shading you're seeing overlaid on the map is the area with which bicyclists cannot ride on the sidewalk. So in that area, you have to be, the brave person and be riding in the vehicle lanes on A, C, 5th, and 6th. That's a little too uncomfortable for me. What that's going to look like, you can see on the next slide, both 6th Avenue and A Street are 3-lane roads. So on both 6th Avenue and A Street, we're converting that leftmost lane into a 2-way protected bike lane. So that graphic in the top left kind of shows you what that'll look like. That left lane is going to be converted to a 2-way bike lane. And that'll stretch, like I said, from Elderberry Park down to the Chester Creek Trail. Next slide. I think Colin can wrap us up and give us a little more information on the exciting event we have coming up.
Yeah, so how folks can get involved, obviously they can come out in person and experience the protected bike lane. We'll have a ribbon cutting event May 30th, 4:45 to 5:30 at Town Square Park. The route will be up through the month of September, and we'll be gathering intercept survey data. So in addition to gathering things like speed data, volume data, truck counts for different routes to see if some of the traffic on I is moved to A. We're doing qualitative data gathering to get survey responses before and after. So that'll be taking place. We're also receiving public comment so that the cross-section of input we get is not skewed only towards people riding, but we can also get comment, capture that from business owners and drivers that are affected by it. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved. Yeah, I just want to highlight too that this project, while small in scope, has really given an opportunity to gain all sorts of wide-reaching observations about what's going on in downtown, what's going on for bike safety, and to connect with all these different community members, and really an opportunity for us to crystallize, future input for future projects. So huge thanks to DOT and MOA for the agreement to proceed with this, and the huge support from your wonderful staff. Thank you.
So happy to entertain any questions.
Well, I'll just add that, I'm very excited about this course and the ribbon cutting. One of the cool things is that that same night of the ribbon cutting, the Anchorage Assembly is going to be hosting another study nerd nights, which are sort of short Pechakucha style presentations from community members. And the theme of that one is going to be transportation. So if you ride the protected bike lane and then go to Aquila space downtown, which is on the route there, and hear community members present about their thoughts on transportation.
So I'm the web blanket on this thing. So I hope you all prove me wrong. I'm very nervous about the location of this bike lane. We went from Pine and McCary to a truck route, essentially. And that is, I think, quite a sweep. And my concern is that something will go wrong and we'll never do it again, because that's how things go in this town. So I'm not doubtful that you are all very mindful of safety, but it also requires some level of safety on behalf of the users and a lot of awareness on behalf of the drivers. So I am, again, waiting to be proven wrong, but I am really quite worried that this particular route, especially with the two-way bike traffic, is going to result in possibly a bad outcome. And so as we get closer, as we're having implementation, if you are having updates about, great, and, I hope it doesn't remain it doesn't become a static project, that it remains a living thing that is subject to tweaking and updating and innovation along the way, as you all see how it works in real time as people start to use it, I guess. So I wish you all the best of luck, but I'm really becoming an advocate for separate facilities, not just add-on facilities. So, yes.
Other questions, comments?
If I can just respond, thank you for that concern. We didn't pick this location lightly, and we did, this process has been a really great opportunity for us to engage with different stakeholders, particularly the trucking industry. So we all collectively met with multiple trucking companies recently at their offices. They were able to provide some really great design details and critiques. The team also provided them with some turning templates to ensure that their route was going to be comfortable. And then we were also able to work with our sweeping operation to ensure that we could actually meet some of their requests, the trucking industry's requests, into the design. So that helped. So my view on success for this project, although it hasn't even been implemented, it has still resulted in many good actions from all of our agencies to partner and continue those conversations and opportunities going forward. I've certainly learned a lot about the different operation aspect of the town, the routing through with different users. The public involvement part of it has been much more robust in the second phase than the first phase, which was part of learning during the first phase. So I hear you, and I think it will be, because these are not physically, constructed, there will be some availability for tweaking things.
Thanks, Bob. So, hearing you say that we have this funding stream, we have the opportunity to, we really request more and more from cities that we drop a lane and change the use of that road. I think while we're in design, that's the right time to do that, right? To have a pilot project like this, I mean, even whether it's used as a protected bike lane or for other uses, it's a good opportunity. So yeah, maybe it's just a statement that I think we have that opportunity. I'd like to see it on some east-west corridors just to see what happens on a, I don't know, on my specs or something like that. And I know that we can talk about that before. I stopped by this weekend and talked to Lucy a little bit, and that was fun. Survey, they were stopping people on the street down here just to kind of survey people about their, whether they were on a bike, what their comfort level was. It's like that. I asked her how we're going to collect data from the users. And she mentioned that, you know, there's going to be a QR code on some signs that, so I guess in my mind, and whether I support it or not is one guy in Anchorage, so it doesn't really, it's not that important. But how are we gonna provide the information to the motorists that aren't gonna stop and scan a QR code? How can they provide their input? How do we avoid having skewed data?
So one of the things that PI for this project has had maybe a disproportionate, scope involvement, and we have been using that to have put out a lot of radio ads on prime time on the types of stations that are going to be capture the regular motorists more than cyclists. So that's one way that we've targeted that, sending people to our website. The other thing I think is just kind of getting the word out and raising awareness, even the messaging that we'll have with portable changeable message boards is going to send people and alert them like this is a pilot project. So those are steps I think that we can do that, and hopefully some positive news coverage will also point people in that direction.
I know there's several options for creating that barrier between the motorized traffic and the non-motorized traffic. And I just think out loud about what are, there are people that ride their bikes in the winter, much smaller use. If we had a winter like last winter, it would be nice to have some storage area to some of those roads. And some of those barriers gonna be take a lot of effort to remove for the winter if we went with a permanent project, or I suppose it depends kind of, but are we always looking for some sort of hard concrete barrier to separate that traffic?
So
I can speak to that.
Yeah,
So once this goes in, we are going to be meeting with both DOT and the municipal maintenance crews, looking at it, talking about it, thinking about it. So there are going to be ongoing discussions. Also to speak to your public outreach question, there are two other critical studies that are in the early stages. The downtown streets engineering study that has a robust public outreach. And so when this goes in, at the same time that project is going on, I'm sure that they're going to get a lot of discussion around whether this is a concept that should be tried other places or how it's operating. So that'll be a way to get really valuable input, even if they don't go to our website. And then the second is the right-of-way management strategy. That is, last I heard, it was in negotiation with consultants to be able to kick off, and that one's going to be looking at the snow maintenance question. It's going to do a robust outreach. DOT, Sean Baskey's on that group participating for DOT. We're going to be looking at kind of all of those questions. How do we do the snow question? And so all the different people that are like the operating from the maintenance side are aware and engaging in these different studies. So doing all of them from a little bit different angle and having something on the ground, which is really one of the things that this pilot study is doing, is putting it on the ground. And so I'm sure that my phone number is going to be ringing quite a bit. I'll get a bunch of emails as well from the public reaching out, wanting to tell us what they think about it. So
I think it's good to keep it in place for several months because people may sort of after change is hard, right? So
on the barrier question, so this project did look at, for some context, the most challenging part of installing a pilot is that we can't have any effect on the existing infrastructure. We can't affect any of the striping. So everything has to be temporary and be able to be fixed So the real options are like a flex post, like we're showing these plastic posts that are adhered down to the pavement, or some type of concrete barrier. And we due to the time frame, we weren't able to incorporate the concrete materials for this one. But there's a spectrum of types of concrete barriers that could be used in the future, even like a shorter extruded curb, or an 18-inch, modular precast, type barriers. There's lots of different options out there, and maybe that even gets looked at in future winter pilot that's kind of focused on that, but out beyond the scope of what we're really trying to do.
Using those rubber curves that was used in the pine, I thought those were pretty awesome. I was just in Barcelona and they had the zebra dividers. There's a company that makes these kind of like rubber
armadillos,
pre-made, yeah, like these little bumps, little curves. And they were all over in Barcelona, which I think is like one of the best non-motorized cities in the world. I don't know, they looked really clean, and there was definitely like a visual divider, but I think they could potentially, something like that could work, with the winter application too. So yeah, just excited to see what our takeaways from the next phase are.
Comments, questions from the committee, any more? How about the public? Does the public have any comments or questions that we'd like to ask?
We do have somebody online. And we have somebody in person.
Let's go online first, mostly because I can't see the person.
Okay. Jason Norris.
Yeah, I just wanted to reach out and say thanks to Anna and Brad. They came and walked Lake Otis with us earlier this week and gave us some great feedback. I'd like to encourage, the expansion of this sort of thing throughout the city where it makes sense. I'd like to also point out that, the concerns of safety are well-founded, but there's a lot of data to support that the installation of these types of features makes vehicular traffic and operations safer, makes them slow down and be more aware of the road. And also, we're not the first northern city to try and do this thing. Obviously, there are concerns about how to keep these facilities going during the winter. There are places to do it around the world. So obviously, we're just getting started, but there are opportunities to learn from others that have done it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, please.
I have a couple of questions. BJ, just, you know me.
First, problem, sorry, say your name first. And then.
I'm Ellen Simple-Jono. These are just me as a person, a resident, not in my professional capacity. Really, as someone who sometimes rides a bike around Anchorage and would like to do it more, I'm curious, are there gonna be, in addition to this rubber curbing you're describing, will there be vertical posts, the flexi posts on this 6th Ave? Yes. Great.
Yes, they will.
Those I know as a cyclist, cars can easily run them over, but they bring some mental comfort, to have something vertical. And then I was curious about, having ridden in protected bike lanes in Seattle. People sometimes like to park in them or pick up their, takeout and use them as a 3-minute loading zone. So will there be any, like signage installed on the curbs to discourage that behavior of blocking the bike lane?
It's a good question. So especially in the context of this wider, two-way bike lane, it's about the width of a car because we're putting it in the place of a car lane. So anywhere that there is a car-sized opening, there will, like at the end sections of each block, there will be posts there to like clearly corral and say, it's not a space for cars, and you would be able to fit a car in. Member Volin brought up earlier, if there's going to be rubber curbs along the whole stretch. So the whole stretch will be lined with both the vertical posts you were describing and actual curb shape elements, something that would make it clear that you can't drive into that lane.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment or question for the presenters? Not seeing any, so yeah, thanks guys, great presentation. I'd say, I guess we'll open it, we're depending on the 31st. Yeah.
It'll probably open before then.
Yeah.
That's just the time to celebrate it.
Exactly. Great.
So, yeah.
As early as late next week.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. Thanks. is, ready. Deputy Commissioner, let's get on board.
I don't see her online.
How about that flight?
I don't see Ben on either.
So, let's move on to 6B, which is pavement replacement project and discussion.
We adjusted it. 6B is the presentation on the STIPs.
Sorry. Yeah, so we'll skip 6B and move on to 6C.
Okay, 6C, pavement preservation project. So, this will be me. I just wanted to have a quick discussion with the committee just to give you guys all an update on kind of where we're at with the pavement projects. And, there's a request to have a discussion about, getting some pavement projects kind of on shelf ready in case funding comes available, you know, what that would take or what we can do about that. So, first, pavement replacement projects for AMATS have recently, started to increase in cost and scope. In the past, they typically were just shave and pave with the existing roadway pavement and then doing ADA improvements of curb ramps. Recently, there's been more and more requests to do additional work. So bring up the sidewalks to ADA compliance, replace drainage, replace signals, lighting, utilities like electrical, as well as possible lane reductions, speed slowing, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that people are asking for. Because the idea is, if we're gonna be out there already, then we might as well do what we can, because we don't know when another project will come along. So I just wanted to bring that all up to you because it does increase the cost of the project, which typically means we have to come to the policy committee and say, this project was originally only 3 to 4 million, it's now 10, 11 million with all the stuff that wants to be done. What do you guys want to do? So I just kind of wanted to have a discussion with you all to see if that is the kind of direction you want these pavement projects to be going in. Do you want them to be looking at doing as much as possible within the scope of a pavement preservation project? Or do you want them to go back to how they were, which is just a shave and pave, don't look at anything else? And then also have a discussion about can we get some pavement projects kind of on the shelf ready, and what that would take? I don't have full knowledge, so hopefully DOT can step in and kind of talk about, you know, is there a timeline process that we have to worry about? Because in the past, there used to be payback requirements after a certain amount of time. I forget the exact terminology for it. I'm sure Luke will be able to help with that, but I think that went away. So we can design stuff and have it shelf ready to go, but it'd be nice to maybe have that discussion so all the committee members are aware and then give direction to staff on what you guys would like. We've never done this kind of discussion before, so please bear with me. We're trying it new. So, that's all I have. Thank you.
Comments from the committee?
Yeah, pretty fun. So I'm the one who asked about what it would take to kind of put some projects on the shelf, because it seems to be a bucket where if we have a project blow off that we tend to dump money into, but it's kind of good to know what we're targeting versus just kind of holding the money, particularly if additional projects can be looked at in the context of what other projects might be happening in the vicinity, because Greg, we have the way we know DOT roads often work within a municipality is there are other roads that are nearby them, of course, that aren't usually DOT roads. And so we might have the opportunity to look a little bit more some sequencing or other things. There's nothing better than being an elected representative to have one road project just finishing up and here comes another one and they just weren't quite sequenced, but they're adjacent. The neighbors really dislike that. So, so if we can just have kind of those things, versus, just kind of scrambling to find projects. Thanks.
Sure. I would concur. I think there's a lot of benefit in having shelf-ready projects. We have historically, previous career here, we see these funding sources that may not be AMATS, but other sources that come available or additional funding program cancel projects. And if there is the opportunity for shelf-ready projects that go through the coordination and the interagency coordination that Meg is talking about, I think it'd be very beneficial. So if there's a way forward on that, I don't think we solve that in this discussion, but if there's a way forward, Karen, I think that we're still
So Aaron, could you speak to like, you know, the opposite end of the shape of pay? Like, what's the full capability of payment to the projects, putting in sidewalks, putting in ADA, components, how far can you go in this category?
But it's kind of where I'm gonna need DOT's help with, because typically pavement replacement projects are replacing what's already there. So adding in new facilities or bringing it up to ADA requirements. So adding new facilities in that don't exist typically are beyond a pavement project. I don't know if chair's okay, if there's DOT people here might be able to help answer that. And I think also Sean Baskey is available if you guys want to know about general timeline on pavement projects.
But yeah, I could let maybe Luke speak to what's allowed in preventive maintenance projects.
Yeah, sure. So, Luke Bowen, DOT, maybe a little terminology first is just to kind of break them down into 4 different Rs, 1R, 2R, 3R, 4R. The 1R would be our resurfacing project. That would be our minimal shave and pave. We do have the ability to address safety issues on that, but for the discussion here, usually the idea is that we're trying to minimize the amount of scope creep that's allowed in those projects so that they can be delivered quickly and address those pavement conditions. With that, we can do dig outs, that would be subsurface excavation to address any issues underneath the pavement that would be more than just a resurfacing, but we're limited to 25% of the project area on that. 2R would be a little bit more advanced, where we are allowed to do 50% dig outs. Still more of a resurfacing type project. We do have the ability to do drainage, culvert repair, different things along those natures, but still mainly repairing what we have. 3R or rehabilitation projects look at a more holistic, what do we need to do to correct within the corridor, within the project area. There would be a 3R analysis that would weigh the cost benefit analysis or kind of pluses and minuses of all the different improvements that we could do. It wouldn't mean that we meet all standards, but we would do a much more involved analysis on that. And then a 4R reconstruction, we would move forward with reconstructing it to a full standards without the analysis on whether we should or shouldn't do something. I think that's a fairly general approach. There's obviously nuance with each one of these. If Baskey's online, he might be able to correct me on a number of them.
I don't know, and then of course the timeline question is a little bit harder because it's more project dependent, but what can you tell us about the timeline for delivering typical resurfacing project?
So typical resurfacing projects, right now, I think our average is more funding dependent than actual project delivery timeline. We do have a lot of pavement preservation needs across the central region and across the state. I think our most recent timeline was 5 years, but that's not necessarily how fast one of those projects could be developed. I think if there's a very urgent need, 18 months will probably be the soonest that we could deliver something. But again, that's dropping existing workload and focusing solely on that. So I think 2 to 3 years is probably a realistic timeline for a 400 project. And that's not including any right of way for entering into that. And likely minimal or no utility involvement, or if you want to enter in any agreements with utility companies to relocate facilities.
Does that help? Answer the question? Yeah. Any other discussion? Just a few things that I would add is that I don't, it's a hard question that we're going to figure out today. Yeah. We're looking at it at a statewide, from a statewide perspective too, is that preventative maintenance block has, where they all grow in scope. I don't remember any projects that we've done in the last 25 years that were shaded pave. I'm sure there's a few, but not too many. No, it's, again, we have that mentality, which is good, that while we're there, we want to do as much good as we can. Sometimes fixing the drainage is going to prolong the life of the pavement itself, so that's important to keep it in some projects, but it's almost like it's a project by project decision. But yeah, I don't know, once it gets to a certain, once it makes sense, and once it gets to a certain dollar figure or scope range that it falls into a different funding law, I don't have a good idea what that limit would be right now, or that threshold would be. The shell projects are a great idea. We just had our design status meeting this morning, and we had that conversation, is that it's always good to have projects ready to go so you can plug those holes, because every year projects slip out. I think Lou probably touched on it a little bit. It's a resource question right now that DOT has a lot of work with our engineering staff. Our consultants are all pretty close to capacity, but yes, definitely a good idea to try to get some of those projects on the shelf. And bundling projects, absolutely. I mean, not only does it decrease disruption to neighborhoods, but it's also going to increase the efficiency of the project and reduce the cost. So yeah, I hope that we do that, that we coordinate with whatever projects that the city may have. But we certainly should focus on that.
We do have, every year, what's used to be called, maybe still is, the construction coordination meeting, and that involves PM&E, involves the city, involves DOT, it involves typically the railroad. There's a whole host of agencies that show up, and the utilities typically show up, and one of the intents of that is to identify projects, both for the current year and for out years that might have some synergy, might be in the same area, might have some overlap. Certainly it's not perfect, because the situations Meg talks about do happen, but there is the current effort to do that that's been in place for many years.
Yeah, thanks. Any further discussion? Not hearing any comments from the public, questions? Not hearing, seeing anybody, so I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is committee comments. Does the committee have any comments?
My comment is, I guess, briefly going back to the topic of pedestrian safety. I just really want to encourage us all to think about how, when it comes to addressing pedestrian safety, we're also supporting the needs of pedestrians. And I feel like perhaps as we have the upcoming conversation on HSIP funding, that can be part of the conversation, is if we're looking at interventions, how can we maybe do both at once? Can it be a preferred policy that if we're going to try to deter pedestrian activity at certain locations, and we're also at the same time putting in another crossing or another mechanism to help support active transportation? So that's the comment.
Anybody else have a comment? I have a quick one. Again, when I first started, I think I made the offer to assembly members or anybody really that I'll make myself available or my staff available for any questions that you guys have. I have the pleasure of being the assembly liaison for the community council. And what I have over you guys is that on Wednesday, I can go down through the agenda and I can click on the topics that I'm interested in. I don't have to sit through the whole meeting, but if you guys need us to, would like us to even take a look at some of the resolutions that you put together and just give you some guidance on accuracy, I'm happy to do that. For instance, I guess that I don't mind the idea of allowing businesses to use the right of way or whatever they might, for outdoor seating or whatever that ordinance was, but it would be good to have a conversation about what Title 23 requirements are. It doesn't say that we can't do that, but there's some other things that there's other, I guess, not complications, but price tags that go along with that, responsible for accepting that federal money. So anyway, any problems on any projects, like I say, I'll meet with you before hours, after hours. I know you're busy folks. I'll provide any of my licensed professional staff to give you advice on it. That's my comment. Any comments? Okay. We're on to item 8, which is public comments. Are there any comments? Please, Mr. Knight.
Hi, my name is Kyle Milkey again. I just want to put on like my actual public transit advocacy hat. I just wanted to speak briefly that I have been trying to get onto the Public Transit Advisory Board for 2 years now, and talking with the folks at the mayor's office, they've repeatedly told me that they have shown the mayor, and they have told me no. And I am just encouraged again by even more things going to the PTAB. As one of the only people of the public that have attended all of these PTAB meetings, that I'm very encouraged that more work is being put in front of them. And I am encouraged that I spoke with the director of the public transit department just 2 days ago, and she recommended me to the mayor again. So I'm hopeful, and just really wanted to get the word out there that even though there's a lot of contention regarding boards and commissions and where that's looking at right now, that my effort has been longstanding and has happened much before all of this contention. So I'm hopeful. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, I do have one. I'm not a committee member, so I just do the public comment. So I just wanted to give a quick update to the committee members. Due to AMATS's staff shortages, we're going to have to put a hold on our subcommittees for a little while until we can get staff available to attend those. We've been stretched pretty thin recently. So I do know that the CAC and BPAC and FAC have been very active recently. Unfortunately, we just are very limited. It's John, Christine, and I, and John is retiring at the end of June. So it may just be Christine and I before we can get staff on board. So we are limited in what we can do. And unfortunately, some things are going to have to be delayed or postponed for a little while. So the Community Advisory Committee is required for a number of different processes that we have to do related to the PPP, the TIF, the MTP. We will still continue to do those. But our regular scheduled meetings we'll have to put on hold for now for BPAC, FAC, and CAC. We'll do our best to just keep the members informed. And then as soon as we can get a little more staff availability, we'll resume those and we'll let everybody know. The intent here is not to silence anybody. It's just we are stretched thin, as I said. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that. So thank you.
Congratulations, John. Thank you. We'll see you next month.
Oh, and I think tomorrow is bike to work day, so just add that.
Okay. See anybody else? I think we can move to agenda item 9, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Sorry. Okay. Full hands, no objections.
Morning.
Okay. That's right. Not that I don't do it. Well, I guess we missed the presentation.
Yeah.
We just wanted to.